The courtroom was shaped like a circle of stone and stars. The ceiling shimmered with galaxies, reflected through a dome of crystal. Below it, alien delegates from every edge of the Union sat in silence. Not out of respect, but out of curiosity. They had come not to learn, but to watch. In the center of the chamber stood a small boy from Earth. His name was Keel. He was 13, barefoot, and covered in dust from the long journey. He wore a cotton shirt with torn seams and one sleeve missing around his wrist. A glowing band pulsed red with quiet authority, a signal that he was not allowed to speak, move, or even cry without permission. Magister Vayal slithered to the podium, his robes dragging across the polished floor. He was made of smoke and silver scales. His voice was smooth and sharp, like someone reading a bedtime story with a knife in his hand. He began listing the charges: unauthorized access of a sacred relic site, violation of Code 42-9, cultural interference, recklessness in a historical preservation zone. The list went on. The crowd nodded in slow agreement, pretending to understand every law mentioned, but most of them were only here for the final act. Keel had not meant to do anything wrong. He had been visiting a classmate on the planet Riffin. They had gone exploring near an old temple ruin, when he picked up a stone from the ground and asked why it had holes in it. His voice had echoed inside the chamber and triggered an ancient security field. Within minutes, armed patrols had taken him away. He had not run. He had not screamed. He had only asked a question. Now he stood alone in a circle of Power Ambassador Norenvale, sat in the gallery. Expression calm. His hands were folded in his lap. His suit was simple, not flashy, and his presence almost too quiet to notice. He looked more like a librarian than Earth's official voice in the Union. Beside him, his aide Mara glanced around, tense, unsure what to say, but Noren said nothing. As Magister Vayal rolled the final scroll, the room grew even quieter. The boy has shown no regret. He announced, his ignorance is not an excuse. It is proof that Earthlings are incapable of understanding boundaries. Some delegates chuckled. Others looked away. A few took notes with feathered pens or blinking datapads, but no one objected. And so, they all said, the sentence is set. Immediate atmospheric dissolution. The justice turned to the sky camera. A symbol flashed across systems, and a chime rang out across the galaxy. Screens lit up. Families paused. Military officers leaned forward. Shopkeepers paused their work. The image of a single child, barefoot and still, filled every corner of the known stars. Keel lifted his head, his voice small but clear. I just didn't want to guess. I wanted to understand. No one replied. Not the Magister, not the crowd, not the sky. A glowing sphere descended from the ceiling, humming faintly, locking onto the center of Keel's chest. 3 seconds passed. The boy turned his head slowly. His eyes moved across the crowd, searching. Not begging, just searching for one face. He found Norenvale. The ambassador gave him a small smile. Not loud, not proud, but warm. The kind of smile that said, I see you. And I'm still. Herethi light swallowed the boy. In one flash, he was gone. The crowd did not cheer. They only watched. Viol turned back to his scroll, smug with duty. Let the record show. Norenvale interrupted, his voice soft but steady. Let the record show. He said that we heard you. All of us heard you. Delegates turned, surprised by the interruption. Noren stood, buttoned his coat, and nodded once to the priests. In the corner, the boy's name was Keel. He liked old maps, coins from before time, and rocks that made no sense. He looked down for a moment, thoughtful. You will remember him now, because you forced the stars to remember him too. Left the chamber quietly. Not one official stopped him. Back in Earth's diplomatic lodge, Noren removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. He opened a dark wooden case and took out a plain communicator. It had no screen, no decoration, Just a single switch flipped it. A blue light blinked once. Across the galaxy, unnoticed humans paused. In mining colonies, bakeries, schools, trade, ships, and deep observation towers, they stood still, then moved with quiet purpose and at fast. Not loud, just ready. The Dominion had watched a child vanish, but they did not understand what they had awakened. Earth did not shout. It did not threaten. It simply remembered. And remembering for Earth was never passive. ****. The high chamber emptied like a tide, pulling back from shore. Hushed footsteps echoed under vaulted glass. Delegates whispered behind raised sleeves, yet no laughter followed. The air felt thin, as if all the oxygen had followed the boy into the beam. Outside, banners of the Union drooped in artificial sunlight, and somewhere beyond the station walls, millions of screens still showed a blank space where Keel had stood. Then darkness, and a pale reflection of the viewers themselves. A mirror no one asked for, and absolutely no one liked. Mara Quinn hurried behind Ambassador Norrin Vale. Her shoes clicked in quick rhythm, but his steps stayed calm. The corridor lights softened as they passed. Norrin moved with the ease of a librarian, crossing quiet stacks, his voice low. "It starts now?" he murmured. Mara swallowed. She knew what he meant. Still she asked, "What starts?" The reply was the same gentle monotone that had defied a tribunal. The listening, nothing louder than that single word. Yet it rang inside her chest like a bell. They entered a modest suite. Walls plain, furniture simple, a single view panel showed. A curl of distant nebula. Norrin removed his jacket. He opened a narrow wooden case. Mara saw a communicator, older than both of them. No screen, no ornament, just a brass switch set in walnut. Norrin lifted it with care, then pressed one thumb. Against a tiny sigil burned into the side. Light pulsed once, blue and silent. The device spoke to nothing. Yet everything heard. On a dust moon in Sector 5, a miner named Sol Bryn paused mid-swing. He set down his drill, straightened, and stared at the tunnel mouth. His lamp flickered blue for one heartbeat. Elsewhere, on a floating market above, the planet Ysera, a baker wiped flour from her hands. She saw every holosign change to blank white with 3 words in pale gray. "Thank you for clarity." Then the signs blinked back to their adverts. Yet she could not recall what they sold. In a school on Earth's Pacific Rim, children reciting star charts stopped. Their teacher, old Jenin Fei, felt a prickling under her skin. She glanced at the classroom com. No message displayed, but she knew. The way someone knows a storm has crossed the horizon, even when the sky looks calm. Elder son of Tyros sat before a council news feed, his robes woven from bright reed. Fiber, colors soft as dawn. Reporters hovered. Microphones like tiny drones. Elder Sen, does Earth intend retaliation? The ancient philosopher rested 2 palms on his walking stone, his voice like wind over dry grass. Retaliation is noise. Earth has chosen silence. It was not said as comfort. The reporters drifted back, unsure whether to sign off or ask about weather. Far above, on board the Dominion warship Iron Mercy, Commander Ivaros lounged in the command cradle. His scales reflected amber readouts. An aide reported faint data irregularities across border buoys. Ivaros laughed. The humans send ghost stories instead of missiles. He waved a hand. Ignore it. Reroute through auxiliary. They are mourning, not plotting. The aide obeyed, yet small. Alerts kept surfacing. Navigation ghosts, signal echoes folding in on themselves, like the universe was answering a question before it was asked. On the trade moon Carthus, cargo haulers lined up for clearance. Watchers noticed that every human pilot shut off engines at once. Each stepped onto the dock, stood a moment with closed eyes, then walked away. No shouts, no banners, no explanation, but the ripple spread. Stations logged a sudden drop of human commerce. Tavern owners found empty stools, security cams showed. Silent corridors, somewhere. A janitor left his mop and opened a door labeled maintenance only. Inside, lights flickered blue. Mara watched Norin as he poured water into 2 clay cups. Her fingers shook. She whispered, "Is this a warning, Norin?" Shook his head. "A warning is a noise. We do not make noise." He handed her the cup. The communicator's blue light faded. Its job done, Mara drank. The water tasted of copper and dust, like the breath of an old library. She realized she was hearing nothing. No ship engines, no corridor chatter, even her pulse felt quiet. The stillness grew so vast it seemed alive. Outside the suite, guards walked by, their boots softened. Screens dimmed to a gentle monochrome, as though the station itself had chosen to lower its voice. Norin stood by the window. "Minds will race," he said. "They will ask why no fleets gather. Why no angry speeches? They will not notice the gardeners walking into every locked garden." Mara pictured miners on moons, teachers in classrooms, janitors in palace tunnels, all pausing, all stepping forward in unison. The image brought a knot to her throat. Across the star map, small Dominion colonies experienced minor power dips. Repair drones flagged non-critical errors. Data archives reported checksum drift. Technicians shrugged, normal cosmic static, but Eldersen's voice replayed on 1,000 feeds. Earth has chosen silence. Investors pulled funds quietly. Traders rerouted ships. Traffic patterns like migrating birds sensing a storm. Humans never spoke of storms they knew they could not stop. They simply moved the harvest home. Commander Everus grew irritated as more minor failures appeared. He barked at engineering. "Run." Diagnostics again. The crew obeyed. Screens flashed lines of script, then cleared, leaving only one phrase. "Earth remembers." The bridge fell silent. No alarms blared, yet every officer felt colder, because alarms were noise. And Earth was done with noise. In a distant garden dome on the moon Borealis, an elderly botanist knelt by a single Earth rose. She pruned one wilted leaf. The petals glowed softly under grow lights. Behind her, the station speakers whispered a breeze. Though no air system ran, she smiled, patted the soil, and hummed a lullaby older than any starship. The rose swayed as if listening. Mara returned to the window. She asked Norin what happens next. Norin's reply came like falling snow. "Next. We keep listening. Every child of Earth learns to count not by numbers, but by breaths. We have taken the first breath. We will know when to take the second." Mara nodded, feeling both small and vast. A single note in a quiet song that reached across galaxies. Hours passed. The Union Council issued a statement of regret for unfortunate circumstances. The Dominion posted a victory notice on secured channels. Markets dipped, then steadied. No. Sirens wailed. No fleets launched, yet watch stations recorded a subtle shift. Gravitational sensors reading mass where none should be. Like hidden moons aligning, no one connected the data, because data is chatter, and chatter is always easy to ignore. As artificial night settled over the tribunal station, Norin closed the wooden case, placed it back on a shelf, the communicator. Slept, its single pulse still rippling outward. Galaxies turned, stars burned, and in the spaces between, the stillness listened. It was not empty. It was awake. It carried a memory shaped like a boy who asked a question, and an answer that would soon arrive without raising its voice, only raising its truth. The stars above the Dominion systems still blinked in their familiar rhythm, but those who watched closely noticed something different. It wasn't brightness or position. It was the silence between the flickers, too exact, too steady, like a breath held by something enormous. All across the Dominion's outer colonies, things were beginning to forget themselves, and no one understood why. In the city of Marinova on the planet Ventura, a librarian opened her archive as usual. When she accessed the Dominion Historical Index, entire records were gone, Not corrupted, not deleted. Simply never there. Census logs, political treaties, cultural maps. Entire years missing from official memory. She checked again, refreshed the system. But the files still blinked out of sight, as if they had never existed, far away on a Dominion. Cruiser named the Obsidian Sail. Captain Lyre barked orders as his ship's sensors picked up odd anomalies in the signal grid. Ghost transmissions echoed back as if bounced off mirrors that weren't there. They traced the signals to empty space, recalibrated, and still received one line over and over, terrain unavailable, memory not found on Earth. Jinan Fei sat quietly. At her desk, her classroom long since dismissed. In her hand, she held a small book with frayed corners. It was Keel's notebook, returned to her by a quiet courier with no name. She opened it slowly, reading questions written in the handwriting. Of a curious child. Why do old rocks have holes? Why do stars seem sad? What happens to sound when no one listens? She closed the book and breathed deeply. Earth never forgot its questions, even when the answers burned. Within the Dominion's Grand Archive, a technician named Oro stared at his screen as maps blinked. Gray, sector after sector labeled inactive. He tapped the console, called his supervisor, and ran the diagnostic again. But every trace of the sector's names, populations, and even trade routes were missing. Gone not just from current logs, but from backups and shadows. The data wasn't stolen. It was never written. As if history itself was being gently edited by invisible hands, Ambassador Norin Vale watched the galaxy shift from the edge of his station. He said nothing, only nodded when Mara entered the room with a new report. She handed him a slate, her voice tight. 32 systems now marked as inaccessible. Norin sipped his tea and replied quietly. Then the garden is growing. In Dominion headquarters, a group of senior analysts held a crisis meeting. Projections floated above the table. Timelines glitched with blank zones. Automated systems triggered alerts, except there was no intruder. No malware, only silence. One analyst suggested sabotage. Another claimed solar flares. A third looked up and whispered something most didn't want to hear. It's human. Not a voice, but a pattern. A shape in the disappearance. On a tiny listening post orbiting a gas giant, a maintenance drone picked up a child's voice repeating. Over an old emergency frequency, the voice was soft, curious. The same voice heard during the trial broadcast. I didn't mean to break it. I just wanted to know what it was. The voice looped once, then vanished. The drone logged it, sent a report, and powered down. As if understanding the message wasn't meant for systems, but for silence. Commander Avaros stared at the bridge screen as a new alert blinked red. A weather control satellite in Sector 6-7 began adjusting temperatures without command. Rain patterns shifted over an agricultural world. Engineers tried to override, but the codes had changed, not replaced. Just realigned to older values hidden deep in the system. Values that matched Earth designs once shared decades ago and ignored. In the Dominion's elite military training facility, their combat simulation network froze, not with error, but with intention, when they rebooted. Every digital environment had been replaced with a single screen showing a simple line of text. You are not prepared to forget him. Jinan Fei placed Keel's notebook on her shelf beside her own lesson journals. She looked out her window at the quiet city lights. It had started raining, real rain, not weather-ordered drizzle. Just sky deciding to weep. She whispered to no one. Let them understand what you were trying to ask. At the Dominion Central Archive, a final message appeared across all connected screens. White text on black. Correction underway. Do not interfere. The lights flickered once. Systems began resetting to a time before Dominion policy, before erase treaties, before the fear of. Soft voices became the shield for arrogance. Elder Sen of Tyros walked among his garden of winged plants. Their silver leaves turned upward, pulsing with breeze. He heard no sound, But the way the plants moved made him nod. Earth has begun the long remembering, he said aloud, not for anyone to hear, but for the stillness to carry on the outer rim. Trader ships returning to Dominion space found their routes had shifted by fractions, enough to lose gravity's sink. Automated systems refused entry. Each vessel received a simple directive: return with memory intact. The captains didn't understand, but they obeyed. Something in the tone left no room for question. Ambassador Vale met with the Telari speaker, an ancient floating figure wrapped in silk and shimmer. The speaker's voice was like dust turning pages. "This is not war," he said. Norin replied, "No, it is justice taught in the language of forgetting." The speaker nodded slowly. The oldest form of truth. Across Dominion cities, people began dreaming of a voice they didn't recognize, but somehow missed. It echoed in schoolyards, train stations, market halls. Sometimes it asked a question. Sometimes it simply said, "I was just trying to understand," and no one could answer. By the end of the fourth day, more than 70 Dominion systems had lost contact with their own histories. Statues stood with no names. Monuments remained, but told no stories. Libraries returned only blank pages. Only one line remained etched into every structure of power. He asked, and you answered with silence. Now silence answers you. Norin Vale returned to his room, stood by the window, and watched as 3 stars on the horizon stopped flickering entirely. He turned to Mara and said, "When the heart forgets a name, it forgets its purpose." Mara nodded and whispered back, "What comes after forgetting?" Norin smiled sadly, remembering again, but this time, without mercy, only memory, only truth, only. The shape of a boy's question echoed across the galaxy, waiting for a response, and Earth was still listening, still counting, still quiet, but not idle, never idle. On the quiet edge of the galaxy, where stars faded into mist and gravity whispered in reverse, a girl named Inari walked barefoot across cracked soil. Her skin shimmered faintly, part human, part something older. Her eyes held the color of moss. Under starlight, she bent down and brushed ash from the ground. Underneath, a green vine pulsed, alive and warm. She smiled, not with joy, but with understanding. It had begun above her. No ships roared, no banners waved, no great battle songs played, only silence hummed in the sky. A silence shaped like memory, across what had once been the Dominion's most proud systems. Cities had gone quiet, not by explosion, but by absence. Air recyclers ran without commands. Water purification towers blinked in patterns no one had programmed, and entire worlds forgot the names of their own leaders inside the summit chamber on Asa 9. Emergency lights glowed dim blue along the floor. The great hall was filled with delegates speaking in frantic tones. Yet none of them could explain what was happening. Data feeds refused to load. Communication lines echoed with old Earth music, soft piano pieces, children's laughter, forgotten radio shows. One delegate tried to speak, but the sound came out backwards, like time itself was tired of listening. Ambassador Norin Vale sat in the center. One leg crossed over the other, calmly writing in his notebook. He did not raise his voice. He did not argue. He simply waited. When the room finally quieted, Minister Thalvin stepped forward. Scales dulled to bronze, voice unsteady, he asked. The question everyone feared, will Earth stop? Norin looked up, eyes calm. We already did. The rest is memory correcting itself. Minister Thalvin trembled. But why erase everything? Not just the weapons, not just the soldiers. Norin's reply was soft. You used a child's voice to teach us fear. Now you will teach your children why they never got to grow up across the galaxy. Forgotten trade stations blinked back to life only to play a single message. Not in Earth's voice, not in a language of threat, but in the voice of Keel, recorded during his final moments. I didn't mean to break anything. I just thought maybe the stone was important. I just wanted to know. The message echoed in systems that once ignored him. Now they listened in silent seat. The edge of known space, the Spectre fleet unmasked. Ships with no names, no windows, only matte black hulls shaped like blades. They did not fire, they did not land. They simply drifted near the biospheres of every Dominion world. Systems that controlled weather, air, crops, and clean water. The fleet touched none of them directly. Instead, it breathed new instructions into their ancient programming. Instructions written long ago by Earth's patient engineers and Caldex. Forests began to grow out of season. Oxygen levels spiked, and trees ignited from within, not from fuel, but from overgrowth on another world. The rain turned to mist that never cleared, blurring out cities like watercolor left in the sun. Dominion scientists tried to stop it, but their codes were overwritten by quiet math, a language of correction, not destruction. In the council, Minister Jorth stood, voice breaking. You promised. Peace. Norin nodded. We did, and we kept it. We preferred peace. But preference is not the same as promise. It was your mistake to treat our kindness as weakness. Thalvin clutched the edge of his podium. Then what do you want from us? Norin leaned forward, steady as stone. We want you to feel the silence of a question that never got answered. We want you to stand under a sky that no longer remembers your name systems across Dominion territory dimmed, then went black. Not all at once, but in a slow rhythm, like a heartbeat slowing before sleep. Entire archives disappeared. Not burned, not stolen, just gone. Erased by the same gentle hand that once offered peace. Earth was not at war. Earth was remembering with purpose, and forgetting with precisionary. The girl with moss-colored eyes stood now in a field of ash. The green vine had grown, small, leaves opening toward the sky. She knelt and placed her hand on the soil. Warm light flickered around her fingers. The garden always remembered where its seeds had fallen back in the summit chamber. Norin Vale tapped a button. A three-dimensional map appeared in the air. Planets flickered red, then gray, silent and unreachable. One delegate sobbed. Another fell to their knees. Norin stood slowly. His notebook closed. We didn't destroy your empire. We simply made it too forgotten to matter above Earth. An old radio tower on a forgotten moon broadcast a child's laughter. Not the sound of victory, not the sound of revenge. Just the voice of someone who once wanted to understand something bigger than himself, and had been punished for Iten, the observation ring orbiting Ganymede 6. Norin stood alone, hands folded behind his back. The stars before him were darker. Now, thinner, emptier, constellations shifted as Dominion systems vanished. Not burned, just never remembered again. His aide stepped beside him. The council wants your final report. Norin nodded. They'll receive it. She hesitated. And what should we call this? Norin looked through the glass. Voice calm. Call it a funeral. She blinked. A funeral, sir. Norin nodded once. We gave them 8 minutes of silence, and now we bury them in understand engineering. Walked further through the field. Green slowly overtaking ash. Behind her, the air shimmered as if something vast had exhaled. Above her, the sky blinked not with stars, but with growing things, vines curling through the dark, wrapping memory in roots and renewal. Earth never wanted to be feared, only heard, and now, across the galaxy, every breath was a whisper of its reply. Not a threat, not a warning, but a simple truth. You touched the child who held the seed, and now the garden remembers, the garden grows, quiet as fire, steady as dawn, unforgiving as memory, and gentle as the hand of a boy who just wanted to understand.